Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. Um, I'm Carrie Jorgensen from ESM Prep, and I'm here to chat about how to tackle the UC application. I am a senior college counselor here at ESM Prep, and in a previous life, I worked in high schools for about 10 years, supporting students with their college planning journey, and then also spent 2 cycles on the admission side of the desk, first for UC Santa Cruz and then for UC Berkeley. So I'm here to share some insights on my time in that position, and really help hopefully any attendees who are planning to hit submit on that UC application by the deadline of November 30th. All right, so just a quick overview of what we'll be covering today. We're going to talk about the timeline and what to prepare. We'll talk about how the UC actually conducts an application review, and then we'll get into the nuts and bolts of the application. So in terms of timeline, the UC application is actually already open. It opened on August 1st. So maybe some eager beavers in the group have already started their application. If not, that's okay. Um, and then you have a filing period between October 1st and November 30th. So you really, in a perfect world, a student could open the application early August, work on it for about 2 months, and then they can submit it anytime between October 1st and November 30th. The rumors are true. If you've heard, the closer you wait to after Thanksgiving, the slower the site crashes do sometimes happen. So our goal for our students is always to submit the application prior to Thanksgiving. That sweet spot is really anytime between November 1st and November 20th. You must meet the deadline, and late applications are really not accepted. Admission decisions, that's always a big piece of the puzzle that families wonder about. Campuses may begin to admit students as early as February 1st, but most students will receive notification of admission via the campus applicant portal during the month of March. March is kind of our UC season. Just as a quick reminder in terms of how admission plans work, if you apply early decision to a school, usually that application deadline is around November 1st. And then in addition to an early decision school, which is the binding type, you can also apply to some early action or regular schools. And so UC only offers one deadline. It's considered regular, and that's due November 30th. But in the event that a student is admitted to their early decision school and they've already submitted their UC application, then they will need to rescind their UC application, because they are in a binding agreement with the school that they got admitted to. UC does sometimes engage in waitlist. We do see that from time to time. This particular application cycle, I had a student waiting on UC Berkeley for engineering and was never admitted off of that waitlist. So a lot of it is really major dependent, and school dependent, but sometimes students do hear from a waitlist, and that can go all the way into July after the student's senior year. Um, so another kind of piece of the puzzle that is worth touching on is there's something called guarantee of admission. In mid-April of the student's junior year, applicants who were identified as being in the top 9% statewide, or the top 9% of the local context, it's called an ELC, and have met or will meet all admission requirements, but were not offered admission to any campus at which they applied, they'll be sent an email letting them know that there will be space found for them at some campus. So it's kind of the guarantee that no matter what, no matter how everything shakes out, you will be given that that spot somewhere in April of your senior year if you weren't admitted somewhere else, but you were identified as ELC. And then this goes for all colleges, but by May 1st, you have to give your statement of intent to register. And that's the deadline to submit your deposit, and really to only one campus, and to celebrate the end of an application cycle and celebrate where you're headed off to for your college journey. I always like to start with an overview of the colleges that make up the UC system. The most north school is UC Davis, all the way down to UC San Diego. There's 9 schools in total for undergraduate. Oftentimes, I'm in the Bay Area. Students think that they can apply to UC San Francisco, but UC San Francisco is in fact a campus with only a medical center. So students coming from high school are not eligible to apply to UC San Francisco, but you can apply widely within the 9 undergraduate campuses. And it is as simple as it sounds. You are checking a box. You are welcome to check all 9 boxes, or you can pick the schools that really jump out at you. The UCs review applications independently of one another. So when I read for Berkeley, I had no idea if a student was also applying to UCLA or UC Santa Barbara or UC Santa Cruz. There is an application fee associated with each box that you check, but you are, in theory, able to apply to all 9 schools if you so chose to do that. So in terms of being prepared, really, you're tuned into this webinar, so that's step 1. Great job. What we really want our students to be doing is to start the application now. It always surprises students with how much work goes into this application. I would argue that it's just as heavy in terms of workload as the Common App, the other common platform that students use to apply to colleges. So start early and be diligent and really make sure that you have enough runway to thoughtfully complete the application. Students really should research the campuses now, and the recommendation from the UC is to apply if UC is really an option that you're looking for as a family, maybe from a price perspective. You really should apply broadly across the system. Some colleges within the system are much more competitive than others, and so by applying broadly, you could have a higher chance of earning a spot at one of those campuses. You really should take the time to learn about majors offered and all the types of courses needed to earn the UC degree, to be fully informed about graduation requirements and plan how long it may take to graduate. Some majors, this is true of all colleges, but worth noting, some majors have different names across the system and may be located in different departments. You could be a communication studies major at one school or a mass communication and journalism major at another school. So really you have to read the fine print, be your own consumer, and really take the time up front to review that best fit major for you and select it within the application. The other thing to note is that some majors are not open to freshman applicants. And so that's abundantly obvious within the application, but you should just realize that some majors are reserved only for rising junior once they've completed a certain set of undergraduate courses to get to that point. Also, at this juncture, it's a really good idea to be gathering your transcript and your academic record. The UC requires that applicants give them a list of their current courses as well as their planned courses for spring term. It's also a great time to pull out the box where all the awards and honors are and really take stock of all of the extracurriculars, volunteer programs, jobs, anything that an applicant has spent time doing from the very beginning of freshman year to present should all be collected ahead of completing the application so that it's completed in the most thoughtful way possible. The other piece of the puzzle that's really important to start thinking about now is what we call the PIQs, personal insight questions. I'll go more in depth into what those are later on in the webinar, but starting to write those early and get feedback sooner than later is going to be really important. So in terms of application review, many families wonder, well, how will my application be looked at by the UC system? And it's a very valid question. So kind of to qualify for freshman admission, students must meet UC's subject and GPA requirements. Some of you may have heard of the A to G subjects. This is a very common set of classes that students are enrolled in across California high schools, both public and private. Our schools in California do a tremendous job of preparing students so that they meet that minimum eligibility, meaning that they have taken, so the A requirement, for instance, is history and social science, and you have to have completed 2 years of that in order to meet that minimum A to G requirement. The B requirement is English, and that's a 4-year requirement, so 4 years of English. C is math. The UC expects that applicants at a minimum engage in 3 years of math. D is science. 2 years are required for that. Language other than English is E, and that's 2 years. And visual and performing arts is that's 1 year of a visual and performing arts class. And then G is for college prep electives. And electives vary from school to school and how they're designated. So you can always look this up. A quick Google of UC high school articulation will pull up the A to G course list. You can pop your high school's name into the website and it will tell you exactly what courses qualify as A to G. Your best resource for figuring out your A to G requirements is your school counselor. They have loads of resources that tell you which classes are designated. And then actually the application has gotten really smart. And when you put in your high school, it pulls your A to G list. So it's really easy when you're adding in your classes into the application to make sure that you have added all of the right courses into the right buckets. Out-of-state applicants is a totally different ballgame, and it's really just trying your best to match what you've taken in your high school as best as you can into what those A to G requirements are. So there's the A to G subjects, and then there's also the GPA piece. So in order to qualify for UC admission, you have to earn a minimum GPA of 3.0 in all A to G courses. The UC calculates your GPA on all of your sophomore and junior year A to G courses completed with letter grades, including courses completed in the summers after 9th grade and after 10th and after 11th grade. So the benchmark is a little bit harder for out of state. That minimum GPA is 3.4. So that's kind of that bench line that is the UCs are looking for. Unfortunately, by having a 3.1 GPA and taking all the A to G classes, that is not going to be sufficient typically to get into one of the more competitive UC schools, just because the pool is so saturated with highly qualified applicants. And then it's worth noting that the UC went what's called test blind several years back. They will not consider the SAT or ACT tests in those scores when making an admission decision or giving out scholarships. If you do choose to submit your test scores, which are asked in the application, they might be used as an alternate method for fulfilling minimum requirements for eligibility or for course placement. So say that you are accepted to UC Davis and you've also added in your ACT scores. The ACT scores will not be used in the admission review, but what they could be used for is placement into that entry-level English class in your freshman year, for instance. So I usually have my applicants put their test scores because it saves you the time and headache down the line of having to add those in if you are accepted and choose to enroll in one of the UCs. But you just have to realize that getting that 1550 on the SAT, while that's tremendous, it's not reviewed as part of the UC admission policy or practices rather. So there's also, campuses use multiple factors when selecting students. The way in which campuses select students really varies, and it's to the student's advantage to include as much information as possible on the application. Unlike schools that are on the Common Application. Common App has 1,100 and counting number of colleges and universities on their platform. Say you apply to, 15 schools on the Common App, and then you apply to a couple schools within the UC system. The Common App Common App schools often require letters of recommendation, both from the counselor as well as 2 teachers. The UC application does not take into consideration letters of recommendation. So the student's voice is the only voice in the entire application. So that's why completing a thoughtful application is so incredibly important for the UCs because it's the student telling their story without anyone else's perspective or validation of what they have accomplished. And so really the way in which campuses select students, it does vary. But in general, it's to the student's advantage to include as much information as possible on the application. And that's across the UC system. Every UC just wants to know the student's context. And it's what we call a missed opportunity when a student just blows the application off and doesn't thoughtfully complete every single section. Admission representatives, they really want to know about the experience, the accomplishments, and challenges of every applicant. Students really should feel free to discuss their roles and responsibilities at work or in community service. They should share their stories and their PIQ responses and talk about their educational journey. This is because every student is considered in the context of their own environment, which includes but is not limited to their school, their family, and geographic region. Students are also considered within the context of the applicant pool for each campus. Excuse me. Each campus will really conduct their own individual review of the application independently of one another. I mentioned this previously, but it's always worth reminding applicants. So they will not know which other UCs you have applied to, and they will not know which other UCs have admitted you or denied you, or waitlisted you. So each campus really does do an independent selection process. So a couple other things that I think are important for families to understand when you're thinking about the application review. This is directly from UC Davis's website, admission website, and you will find a very similar statement on every UC campus's website. So they say, we spend time to evaluate your academic achievements in light of the opportunities available to you and your demonstrated capacity to contribute to the intellectual life at UC Davis. So that context piece matters so much. I would argue that UC cares about context more than any other educational system in the United States. They really, really want to understand who you are. What is life like for you and your own universe? What opportunities have you been afforded, and how have you taken advantage of those opportunities? What setbacks have you faced, and why have you faced those setbacks, and what have you done as a result of those setbacks? So really providing that context is so critical. There's really about 13 different criteria that the UC focuses on, and we can think about those criteria in two different buckets. There's academic performance, and then there's really personal qualities and experience. So you can find all of these again on, this is taken from the UC Davis website and adapted a bit, so it makes a little bit more sense for you as an audience, but it is basically the criteria that UC Davis says that they use to evaluate each applicant's potential for success at UC Davis. Read between the lines on that, and they're looking for evidence that you are going to be successful when you enter into their campus. And so it's your opportunity to convince the admission officer that you're ready for everything that college entails academically and extracurricularly. And they're considering both your academic achievements and the unique context of your background and your experience. So these are just an overview of those criteria that I mentioned, things like GPA, how rigorous was your course load, what kind of quality senior year program are you engaged in? Senior year is not the year to slack off. It's not the year to take the easy course load. It's the year to show colleges that you are keeping your foot on the pedal and that you intend to continue to excel academically so that you truly are ready for that freshman year classroom. They want to understand your contextualized GPA or your academic performance considered in light of the opportunities available at the student's high school. If your high school only offers 3 APs and that's all you took, you're not going to be penalized because you didn't take 15 APs. Your high school didn't offer them. That was not within your context. And so as an admission reader, you are well versed in what the school offers and you have a really strong sense of the opportunities available to a student. They also want to understand, is there any outstanding performance that pops up? Has the student really excelled in a specific subject area? Maybe they have a really deep desire to go into biotech. And so they've taken every science class available to them at their high school. And then they've also taken community college courses. And they've also spent some time researching in a lab and secured a volunteer position at their local college. Something along those lines is really going to show that outstanding performance in a certain subject area. Also, they want to know, what kind of special projects have you done? Is there anything academically that you've taken on because you just have that thirst for knowledge and that you really are pushing yourself to the limit to be curious and to dive deep into something that excites you? And then there's the personal qualities and experiences. So they want to know about your life experiences, academic accomplishments, extracurricular accomplishments, all in light of your own circumstance. And so if you have a circumstance that has maybe not allowed for you to be as involved extracurricularly in sports, for instance, because you are responsible for caring for 3 siblings at home because your parents work 2 jobs, the UC needs to know that. You cannot assume that they know that. You need to make that abundantly clear. There's 2 different sections of additional comments, which I'll touch on in a minute. And it is really important that you leverage those additional comments to make the reader aware. You don't need to tell a sob story. You just need to be really matter of fact. Remember, context is everything. Leadership potential. They want to know, how have you impacted your community? Whether that's, maybe I'm a leader of my Boy Scout group, or maybe I'm a leader in a student body position or a club, or maybe I'm not in a formal position of leadership, but I've taken the initiative to start something and led my school to have the biggest canned food drive in history and really owned that piece of the Key Club, even though I'm not the president of Key Club, but I really owned that piece. So they want that evidence of you taking ownership within the context of your own school and offerings. Special talents and achievements, do not be shy. If you were awarded, you won the mathlete competition in 9th grade, you should put that on there. If you've spent time working in 4-H and your pig weighed the most and you were able to, outshine all the other students in 4-H, you should put that on there. Anything that is worthy of a resume. Imagine you're applying to a job. You want that employer to know all the bells and whistles, all the shiny things about you as an applicant. It's the same process for the UC application. They also want to know, do you have unique skills? Maybe you are somebody who has spent every single summer doing scuba diving and you have a deep love for the ocean and marine biology. Well, you should connect those dots for your reader. Okay, you're telling me you want to study marine science. Oh, I understand. This is context. You have been scuba diving since you were 14 years old and you are PADI certified and you've done XYZ related to it. These are all compelling things and unique things about you. School location, your secondary school location and your residence does matter. There's not really much more that I can say on that front, but the UC does try to do a top-notch job accepting students from a wide swath geographically. And so they're looking for those students that maybe come from really rural areas, and also students who come from, really densely populated metropolitan areas. So really your location of your school does matter in terms of the greater context of how they're shaping their freshman class. And then that ELC status, which I mentioned earlier in the presentation. So being identified in the top 9% of your high school class means that you have that guarantee of getting a spot at one of the 9 UC campuses. So that's really the admissions overview. The application overview is where I'm going to head next. So imagine you have gone to the UC University of California website, you've started your application, and here we are. You can go to apply.universityofcalifornia.edu to get to the start of the application. And then you need to tell the reader exactly which level you're applying for. Apologies that this is not updated with fall quarter semester 2026. And your application level. So in this case, this whole presentation is geared towards freshman applicants. So you're going to want to make sure that you click on that freshman button. The navigation bar, so once you're up and running, the navigation bar is on the right side of the screen. Students can complete the application in any order, but should really complete the About You section first, as it contains what we call conditional logic, which will then be used throughout the application. So the first step I always have my students do is start your UC application, record your username and password in a secure Google Doc, and then go ahead and complete the About You section, because that will unlock the rest of the application. The About You section is going to be full of questions that parents can absolutely help their student on. It does ask things like social security number, family income. They want to know about the year and universities that the parents attended. They want to know if you are in fact a California resident and how long you've lived in the state. Just a quick note, you do not need to complete the social security number if you're not applying for financial aid. And you also do not need to provide your family's income if you are not applying for financial aid. If you are applying for financial aid and want to be considered for a fee waiver, meaning that your application, the fee would be waived and you can apply to the school without having to pay, I believe, the $80 per application, you're going to want to put your family's income into that section. But About You is pretty straightforward. I often tell students it's like filling out a form at the doctor's office. Get it right. Be sure to have all your documents with you. Oftentimes, this is a good thing to complete at the kitchen table with mom or dad, because it is just data that sometimes not every teenager is super on top of having. Now, College View. This is the next section where a student is going to say exactly which campus and which major a student plans to apply to. So this is kind of the default view, but students can also look for majors that are grouped within colleges. So just know that that's an option. You can always click college, or you can click category. And then students can select both a major and an alternate major if available. Alternate majors are not available at every campus, but if a campus does offer an alternate major, absolutely check an alternate major. Because what happens is if a campus is unable to offer the applicant a place in their first choice major, they might consider them for an alternate major. So be sure that the alternate major is in a subject area that the student really wants to study, and that also kind of backs up a lot of the other contextual information that a student has in their file. So say a student has taken 4 years of Spanish, they really want to study biology. They put that as their first major, but then they put as an alternate major Spanish because they are truly interested in potentially being a Spanish major. That's a good use of an alternate major. Not so great use of an alternate major would be putting like Russian literature, because that's just going to look really funky and out of place unless you talk about that in the greater context of your application. We typically recommend that the alternate major should be in a different area of study than the primary major, because it sort of diversifies your spots. And you typically would want your alternate major to be kind of a little bit easier, quote unquote. So maybe you do, if you feel like you're a qualified applicant, you could do engineering. That's a big if. Engineering is highly, highly competitive, computer science, all the different types of engineering. But let's just say you put engineering as your first, then maybe you put physics as your alternate, and physics is housed typically, not always, but typically in letters and science, which can be asterisk, a little bit easier to get into than maybe a school of engineering, for instance. So yeah, just if there's an alternate major option, do it. So a quick note on UC San Diego. You have to, if you check the box for San Diego, you put in your major and your alt major, you also must rank the colleges in order of preference. to have the best chance of assignment to the college of your choice. These are kind of what are considered living and learning communities. There's no impact on your admission as to what choice you pick. But if you are admitted, then and you choose to enroll, then what UC San Diego will do is they'll go back to your application. They'll see the order that you put these colleges in, and then they will assign you your dorm and your first set of academic requirements based off of what you picked. So there's a nice website that you can click on where it says, learn more about UC San Diego's college system. Make sure your applicant spends the time to get to know each of these different colleges. 8th college is very different than John Muir, or 7th college is really different than Earl Warren. So you want for there to be a match for the student, especially in the event that they're admitted and then they enroll, because you want that freshman year experience to be really positive and that students end up kind of with the right fit group of students who kind of care about the same things and really mimic who they are as people. Okay, so there's a section of the application that asks for 7th and 8th grade coursework. The 7th and 8th grade coursework, just so you know, do not need to appear in the high school transcript. But if a student took Algebra 1, for instance, in 8th grade and then started in geometry in freshman year, the UC absolutely wants to know that. So you're going to want to put Algebra 1, full year, and then do your best to track down the grades. You might have to call your middle school, but you're going to want to get the course and the term period into the application. They're asking only about math and language other than English. If you took, say, Spanish 1 in 7th and 8th grade, and then you also started in Spanish 1 in freshman year, don't bother putting Spanish 1 from middle school. You really only want to put coursework that then advanced you to that next level in your freshman year. So that's a piece of the puzzle. So high school attendance, remember to list every school attended beginning with 9th grade. If you took a summer course, so sometimes I'll have students take geometry over the summer, for instance, through an online high school. That is a high school that the student attended, and it's important that that high school is put on there and that it shows that the course taken and the grade issued came from the other high school. So just be really comprehensive in this section, and you're going to want to make sure that you add it in. You can search for your school by school name, by city, or what's called CEEB code. If you just do a quick Google search, you'll be able to find your high school's CEEB code, or your school counselor can get that for you. And then if for some reason you can't find your school, it can be added by typing the full name of the school and clicking add. That usually applies more for out-of-state applicants. The application is pretty robust and has just about every school on there. So this is the high school edition continued. So you want to enter the dates of attendance. Make sure you get the right month and the right year. You can also select the type of curriculum on this screen. If it's been the same school that the student will graduate from, you want to make sure that you put the end date according to where the student will graduate. And then you want to also be sure to enter the grading and term system for the school. So, in this case, most of my students fall into the A, B, C, D, F, and then semesters, which is 2 final grades per year. You get 1 after fall and 1 after spring. Sometimes schools do trimesters. Sometimes schools do quarters, but the quarter grades don't actually count into your GPA. It's actually those semester grades. So if you have any questions, be sure to talk to your school counselor to figure out exactly what to put there. So high school coursework is the next section. These subjects should look familiar. This is what I was referring to as the A to G. So this is in order: history A, all the way down to electives, which is G. And you really want to be thoughtful. If your high school matches and syncs with the system, all of your coursework that qualifies for A to G will be in here. So sometimes, like econ, for instance, students often are like, well, that's a math class. That should be in math. Well, no, sometimes it can be under social science or it can be under college prep elective. So don't give up and just really you gotta have to thoughtfully look for it, but it's in there. And then if you do have any questions, you're gonna talk with your school counselor. And then just a quick note, any new California high school courses being offered for the first time in the senior year, those might not appear on the course list until October 1st because the UC is kind of calibrating all those course lists right now. So you just want to check back later. And then if for some reason it really isn't showing up, you can manually type it in. Yeah, and then definitely applicants need to remember to put in their 12th grade courses, the ones that are in progress right now, and then also the ones that are planned for the spring. So, I touched on, yeah, if you don't see a course, you can manually put it in. You're going to do this for every grade level, all the way through 12th grade. 12th grade is IP for in progress or PL for planned. Those are the designations. A student needs to have their transcript ready and available as they're completing all of the coursework section. Accuracy is so important. The UC will not take an official transcript from the high school until the student is accepted and chooses to enroll. And how terrible would that be if once they're calibrating the transcript with the application, they realize there's a discrepancy and then your admission is rescinded. So UC relies on the self-reported transcript. It's incredibly important that you follow what is on your transcript to a T. You want to also include all original courses and grades and enter repeated courses and grades for courses in which an original grade of D or F was entered and then repeated. And that's really important. Admission officers are really working hard to put you in the best light. So don't worry if you got, say, a D in something, but then you ended up making it up and you got a B. Awesome. Put that in. It's part of your story. And it's better to be upfront and not hide things and just make sure that it's all out there for the admission officer to see. And then let's see. I think that's about it in terms of courses and grades for now. And then if you've taken any college courses in high school, you want to make sure that you add those as well. If any college or university level courses were completed while in high school, add the college information after the high school information. And that includes courses completed through dual enrollment, or a middle college program, high school, community college program, or perhaps you actually took a college level class and were issued a grade and units from a four-year institution. This process is really similar to entering in the high school information, but you have to make sure that you get it on there. And if you don't, they won't know that you took it. If courses were taken at a California community college, that is transferable really easily into the UC system. And that should appear pretty easily within this part of the application. So students must enter all UC transferable coursework as well as anything that would be non-transferable, so not from a community college, but any college level coursework really should go in this section. You want to give yourself that credit. The additional academic comments. So this is one of two areas where an applicant has an opportunity to give context. Remember how important that is? And the additional academic comments text box is really an opportunity to tell the reader something that they might not be able to get from the academic section. So maybe it's you were signed up to take AP Human Geography, but you also were signed up to take journalism and you had been on journalism for 3 years and this was going to be your chance to be on the school TV. And your counselor called you into their office and they said, you know what, I'm so sorry, but you have to choose. It's journalism or AP Human Geography. That's probably worth putting in here for academic context. It's not a sob story, it's fact. I wanted to take AP Human Geography, requested it. Unfortunately, it was offered at the same time as my journalism class. I chose journalism because I'm committed to that and I wanted to see out my work with the journalism group of students, my teacher, and be on Bear TV. So that is helpful context. It's not going to be something that like you know, it's just context. It doesn't move the needle one way or another, but it explains. So if you have any situations like that, this is an excellent place. Say you had a really bad concussion your freshman year, and it just wiped you out and your grades took a dip as a result. You are going to want to explain, again, not as a sob story, but as fact, what happened, and let the reader know that, it's really about the growth from that setback that you will want to make sure that you focus on when you're explaining it. Okay, now on to a section of the application that arguably is just as critical as courses and grades and the PIQs. So this is the activities and awards. You have up to 20 different activities and awards that you can tell the UC system about. There's 6 different categories. There's other coursework. So it may be anything that didn't fit into the A to G categories. There's educational prep programs. So something like AVID, if you're first generation, or Upward Bound, or Gear Up. There's community service. There's work experience. There's awards and honors, and there's extracurricular activities. And so I have a couple of examples that I'll share with you on what makes a really thoughtful activity description. But 100%, here's kind of like an area where you want to go ham and you want to put as much in here as possible. You do not want to just copy and paste from the Common App, because that is abundantly clear. The Common App allows applicants to talk about 10 activities in 150 characters or less. The UC lets you talk about 20 activities or awards, and you have 350 characters. So it's really clear when you only fill out 10 activities in the UC, and each of them are filling up about half the box. That just like, it doesn't send a thoughtful message. So use your Common App activities and build off of them to provide even more context. So we never recommend that students use acronyms when they're talking about a club or an award. They have no idea what that means. CSF, that stands for California Scholarship Federation. Spell that out and explain what that means. You don't want to list the same activity in multiple areas. For instance, listing like honor society in awards and honors, but then also as an extracurricular or activity, that's just kind of redundant and a waste of space. And if an applicant doesn't have the time or opportunity to participate in school or community activities or volunteer, anything like that, this is your chance. I've had to care for my grandma for 4 years straight after school because she lives with us and both my parents work full time. Okay, great. That is context. That allows me to understand you better. So be sure to, this is really a huge area to leverage that context piece. Remember, it's the student's responsibility to describe their role, responsibilities, and accomplishments in the activity rather than focusing on describing the activity itself. Sure, like we want to know what the cooking club does, but I don't need a whole paragraph about all of the different great Italian cuisine that you cooked. That part needs to be short and sweet. I want to know what you did in the cooking club. Oh, you recruited 20 new members and you put on a cultural night that highlighted your heritage and allowed for you to ask your grandma for that meatball recipe you've always wanted, and then you spread that joy amongst your classmates. That's cool. I want to know about that. So here's a couple of examples that I'll run through. So really, these are, this one is a way to highlight like how you would want to talk about an honor or award. So say your school offers APs, you've taken a handful of APs and you've scored pretty well, 3s or higher on a handful. You will likely qualify for what's called AP Scholar with Distinction. You can find this in College Board in your My AP account. If you fall into this bucket, you want to let the reader know. So describe it. Okay, I took 7 AP tests. 5 were offered as school classes and 2 were self-studied. Okay, that tells me something about you as an applicant. You also self-studied for AP Environmental Science and Biology. And then how do you earn this award? Those are the eligibility requirements. It's given to students who meet 2 criteria with their AP exams. They need to score a 3 or higher on at least 5 exams, and their overall AP score average has to be a 3.5 or higher. So this is a thoughtful way to talk about an award or an honor, gives that context. Then we get an extracurricular activity. Okay, I can see the student clearly very into this one. They've been doing it from 9th grade all the way to 12th. 22 hours per week. Okay, 52 weeks a year. Wow. All right, this student is very, very committed to this Overwatch tournament. Um, and it tells me more. So out of 100 gamers, I placed first overall at my local single elimination esports tournament, winning a $500 cash prize. And the tournament requires a preliminary qualifier of over 300 players to play. So that is really, really context setting. I think what this one lacks is maybe not giving quite enough. If you're doing this 52 weeks a year, it's not clear to me whether or not you're actually in the tournament 52 weeks a year or if you're working towards the tournament. So that would be the only kind of improvement that I would want with this particular activity. This next one shows, a pretty common type of thing we see from students. Common is not bad, but it's how you talk about it that differentiates you. So soccer, okay, you're part of a school team and a club team, 9th through 12th. Impressive. You've been super committed. You've stayed with it. 30 hours a week. Wow, that's a lot of time, and almost all year. So you're saying, okay, you're setting that context. You've played soccer since elementary school. You play for your school and a club. You're the captain of both of the teams. You organize practices with your coaches, and you lead drills. You also work with members of the team, and you host bonding events for new and veteran members. Okay, I get the sense that you were at the core, the heart of this activity, and you've really earned that spot as captain from this description. Here's a volunteer and community service. So Second Harvest Food Bank. You are a lead volunteer. You delegate to your peers to take bulk items like rice and beans, and you disperse them into smaller portions to prepare them for distribution, which involves weighing and using some math. Okay. On other occasions, you package and you hand out food drives. And then here's the really cool thing. I don't know what Second Harvest Food Bank is. I do. It's actually local to where I live. However, the reader might not know. So it's a food bank that currently serves over 400,000 people a year throughout 7 different counties. It distributes over 12 million pounds of supplemental groceries to families and individuals suffering from food insecurity. So that's a really great way to contextualize it, but it doesn't the whole description isn't taken over about how great Second Harvest Food Bank is. It more gives light to what the student has done and their impact. Employment. So maybe you're helping around a parent's job. And in this case, you helped your dad mow lawns, trim flowers, set up dripping and sprinkling systems, learning real life skills, problem solving. This is so great and something that students take for granted. Like those little shadow jobs or things that you've done maybe that are baked into your world because of the context you come from. That is so important to highlight. And you really want to do that. It's a missed opportunity if you don't. So quick note, the UC has a section where you can literally check the box for scholarships that you apply for or that you qualify for. It's one section of the application and it's really easy to go through. The applicant should take the time whether you think you qualify for financial aid or not, because who knows, who doesn't want to have a reduced bill? So go through and check the boxes that match with the applicant's characteristics, interests, and background. And there's no limit to the amount of boxes that you can check. So definitely do that. And then PIQs, just want to spend a couple minutes going through the PIQs. Really, the PIQs stand for personal insight questions. There's 8 of them, and applicants have to choose 4 out of the 8 questions to answer. You have 350 words at a maximum, and we don't care whatsoever which one you pick, as long as you're painting a really rich picture of who you are. So what I always like for students to do is read through the questions and then identify your top 4 questions that you connect with and the topics that you'll be covering. Read through those topics that you've outlined and tell me, does a reader understand me fully through those 4 topics? And if they do, you're off to a really great start. You really want for the PIQs to be personal. They're personal insight questions. You also want for them to read as if you were sitting down with an admission officer grabbing coffee. They do not need to be flowery. You do not want them to have a hook that's creative, that talks about the the snow glistened on the mountain and I sat listening to the birds. You would not talk to somebody like that if you were grabbing coffee with them. Instead, you want to get to the punchline really in the first few sentences. You want to use I statements. I did this. I chose to do that. I learned about this. And you really want every single sentence to provide additional evidence about who you are and why you're talking about what you're talking about. UC also really cares about proof of um, awareness, self-awareness, and who you are in your context, how you've contributed to your community, and why you've contributed to your community. Community being a really loose term. Is that your family? Is that your school? Is it your job? Is it a summer camp that you've gone to for 8 years in a row? They want to know, what is your impact? And that shines through in the activities, but also in the PIQs. So be really thoughtful about the PIQs. The UC has tremendous resources on their website that really further explain what they're asking, and there's even a section for each question that says things to consider. So definitely you want to leverage what's on their website and those tools that are already available. So this is kind of a screenshot of the PIQ page. The word count is listed here, and students can opt to have the PIQ questions emailed to them on this screen, which is really nice. And that's that resource that I was just talking about. So definitely be sure to click that email questions so you can really thoughtfully understand what they're asking. If you're applying to schools on the Common App, which I'm guessing you are, you can adapt your personal statement, the 650 application essay that you have to write for your Common App schools, but just do it really thoughtfully. Strip down any hooks, any flowery language, and get right to the point, and make sure that it follows that conversational flow of what I touched on earlier. So here's the second additional comments box. Students can use this to explain any situation, circumstance, or experience that doesn't appear anywhere else in the application. I would not use this to explain anything academic related because that belongs in the academic additional comments, but use this to really, really give context. Sometimes it makes sense for students to use this area, sometimes it doesn't. It's really entirely up to you if you'd like to leverage this section. But you have 500, I think you have like 600 words, 550 words for this section. So that's hefty. But again, you do not, like, your reader only has 10 to 15 minutes with your application. So you want to make that time count, and you don't want to use this as a missed opportunity in the wrong way. So be really thoughtful about what you put in this section. And then this is the screen where you will review and submit. So the UC does a great job in any application system. Like, you can't just accidentally submit it. There's like a whole process you have to go through. But the first part of that process is to get all of these check marks. Once you've completed from About You, Campuses and Majors, Academic History, Test Scores, Activities and Awards, Scholarships and Programs, and then the PIQ section. And once you have everything filled out, then you'll get all those check marks, and then you'll be able to start the submission process. So for fees, it is $70 per campus. Although I'm feeling like I saw that it might be 80 for this year. So it's 70 or $80. If you do qualify for a fee waiver, you need to select yes to accept the fee waiver, and that's calculated based off of the income that you put in the About You section. And then an application fee payment is required, and it is non-refundable. It has to be submitted by credit card, or you could mail a check. Most students just use a credit card and get it completed right when they hit that submit button. Students really need to keep their application ID in a secure place. This will be used throughout the admission process. When students are setting up what's called an application portal, oftentimes they'll need that application ID to set up the portal without having to do the forgot password or spend the time on the phone with the admission office trying to get into their portal. For those of you that don't know, a portal is where your application decision will ultimately be released. So just make sure you have good housekeeping skills in this process. And then eventually you will be able to see your application status. And here you can see that your application was received and then forwarded to the campuses. So that is an important piece of the puzzle as well. If you do need to make a change to your application, you can make, they only accept a couple of things qualify as changes that they will look at, but you can do that throughout the system as well. So I'm going to end by just saying thank you. We're almost at an hour, so I want for, if anybody has questions, you can email me and I am more than happy to answer those questions for you. I do have a couple resources I want to put in the chat. So the first is access to a counselor slide deck that really helps with going over the activities. So there's that first resource. So be sure to click on that, open it, and snag that. And then the second is I'm going to put the UC Davis application review into the chat as well, so you can read and familiarize yourself with that. And then the last piece is a useful tool just published by the UC for first year applicants. And that's the third and final resource that I will put in there. And this is for first year applicants. You can find out more on the PIQs. Really, like, they have done a tremendous job giving applicants pretty much like detailed insight into what they're looking for. So study it, learn from it, and then do your absolute best to submit a super thoughtful application. So I do see there's two Q&A. One of them is, does ELC apply to only California? And yes, it does only apply to California. And then the second question is, how does UC view any use of AI in the apps? So that's a great question. Because I'm not employed with the UC any longer, I don't actually know what, in fact, the UC's stance is on that, but my guess is that they have a filtering system the same way that other application platforms do, and they will be able to very quickly identify if AI was in fact used. So really, AI should not be used in any way, shape, or form in the PIQs or activities. The student's authentic voice really, really needs to come out. I'm going to answer just two more questions here. Can you change majors once you're in the school? It depends is the answer to that, but often, yes, you can. It is hard though if you're admitted into letters and science and then you want to go into business. Those schools are competitive. Or if you are admitted into English and then you decide one day you wake up and you want to be a computer science major, you can't really do that. So you have to be thoughtful from the beginning. And really, really think through that. Another question is about letters of recommendation. For UC Davis, letters of recommendation are not used at all in the UC system. So that is really, really important to make sure that you don't rely on any other outside voices. It's all the applicant. And for students with disabilities, where is an appropriate section to include impact on studies? I would put that in the academic context section. Definitely want to make sure that you do that. And that 3.4 GPA for out-of-state applicants flexible. I can't really answer that because when I read for the UC, I read for California students, so I'm not entirely sure, but that's a great question to call directly to an admission office and ask. So it's looking like the chat is disabled at the moment. So those resources were not included, unfortunately. And so the first one you can get just by Googling admission.universityofcalifornia.edu, how to apply as a first year. And then the next one is just a PDF, so I can't really share that. And then the last one is the application review criteria. And that you can also just UCLA application review criteria, and you should be able to come across how they do their review. And the last question in the chat, and then I really am signing off, is there any benefit to having a parent or a family member which had previously graduated from a UC school? UC does not look at legacy. You know, of course, an applicant is welcome to mention like something in a PIQ. I wouldn't spend too much time, but you could certainly say like, you know, I've been wearing the UCLA sweatshirt since I was 3 years old, and XYZ. But you also have to remember that every single UC that a student applies to is going to see that. So it might not be the most strategic move to do that. But yeah, legacy is really not looked at. Okay, folks, I'm signing off. Thank you so much for attending, and happy application season.